Good afternoon, good morning, good day to you wherever you are in the world. It is Thursday, August 1st, 2019. I am Bryan, the Director of Skincare Research for Paula's Choice Skincare, and thank you so much for joining me for today's essentially Ask Me Anything Q&A. We're starting on a new schedule where I'm going to be here on our YouTube channel live every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, at least until further notice. And the questions are piling up. I will get to those. Absolutely gorgeous weather here today. I feel like this is the first really pleasant summer day that we've had in a couple of weeks because it's just been a little too hot for me. I'm not one of those people that lives for 90-degree days. I think I would wither and die if I lived in one of those states where the temperature was like that for a good chunk of the year. I'm much more cut out for the cold. Got my Blackberry Bubbly going. Wanted to let all of you know who are watching live that we are offering 20% off our exfoliants. That's special. That promotion, I believe, might actually, it's a holdover, I believe. So, but it's still active right now. So that's pretty cool if you use our exfoliants because it applies to all of them. Let's go ahead and start with Andrea's question. She says, "Hello, Bryan. I have a question about collagen peptides. They seem to be so trendy nowadays, but can they really help skin from inside out, especially with elasticity as we age?" So Andrea, based on your question, I am assuming that you are asking about oral intake of collagen peptides. And the research on collagen as a supplement, particularly when collagen peptides, there's some information that when collagen protein, which is a big molecule, is broken down into collagen peptides, which are smaller molecules, that conversion makes them more bioavailable when we take them orally. That does make sense. I mean, collagen is broken down by the digestive system, but in essence, if that part of that process is happening before you even put it in your mouth, I could see that being a more efficient way of delivering collagen peptides. They do make it through the digestive system so that at least a portion of them can benefit skin. I've actually seen some interesting studies on collagen intake actually improving, more so improving wrinkles and skin firmness, not elasticity in terms of if you have sagging skin, if you are seeing some laxity. And the reason for that is that skin sagging as we get older isn't just about collagen loss. That plays a role, but it's also about elastosis, the prospect where the skin's other supportive element, elastin, becomes damaged and it becomes more inflexible, or it actually starts breaking, kind of like a rubber band snapping. Once you lose that, it's very difficult to get it back, unlike regenerating more collagen, which is fairly, skin will make a nice healthy amount of collagen if we just stop getting in the way of it doing that by using irritating skincare products and exposing ourselves to the sun or to tanning beds or smoking or poor diet and on and on and on. Where was I going with that? Oh, collagen and the peptides and getting to the skin. There are other factors that play into sagging, including bone loss, gravity, fat pad shifting beneath skin can exaggerate signs of sagging. So there's only one portion of that a collagen peptide is going to address, and the others are just kind of left to a large degree to just happen. We can't control gravity. We cannot stop, at least not to a great extent, the bone loss that occurs with age, and we can't stop the fact that as we lose that bone, our skin keeps growing, one of those unfair twists of fate. But when you look at the alternative, as far as just not being here anymore, it's not so bad. Bottom line, I do think that there is a reason to experiment with collagen peptides. As long as you're buying, there's a little something floating around in front of me. As long as you buy from a reputable manufacturer, Take a look at what other consumers are saying about it. Be wary of looking at sites where consumer reviews seem inordinately positive. You know, if nobody has anything realistic or even a bit negative to say about it, I would be a little suspect, unless there's like thousands and thousands of reviews. I wish I could say here's what you should try, like specifically go out and buy this one. There is an ingredient called Verisol. It's actually a brand name, and they've done quite a few studies on benefits of their collagen supplement. It's they've patented it and all this, and some brands that sell collagen supplements will include that because I believe they can license it from the company that makes the Verisol. It isn't always the best approach to take a look at the studies that are only from the ingredient supplier because they have a vested interest in making sure that the results are good. However, if the study is well designed, if there's a control, if it's done double blind, if it's comparative, those are all things that I look for when evaluating research to determine that, yeah, it's coming from the supplier, but what is the likelihood that these results could be reproduced independently? And then, of course, I always check to see what the independent research says about collagen. And there's some mounting evidence that it can make a difference. So give it a go and let me know what you think. I actually need to find a good, I'm curious to try it myself. I need to find one to use, though. I searched on Amazon not too long ago, and I got what's called indecision paralysis. There were so many options, and they were all Prime. I couldn't decide which one that I wanted to try, but I'm gonna go back and look some more. I might just go to a store and ask somebody. Sometimes just going to that brick and mortar store is really, I miss that. A lot of times. I love the convenience of online shopping, but sometimes just going to that store and talking to a real person who knows what they're talking about is just the best. Anka says, "Hey Bryan, I recently lost a great amount of weight. While I unfortunately don't have much loose skin, I do feel like the skin on my body has lost elasticity and looks somewhat old. Tips to reverse that?" Well, Anka, not knowing your age or some other details like how heavy, were you, I don't mean this, I'm trying not to sound indelicate here, but how overweight you were before the weight loss, because assuming the weight you lost was intentional, you were dieting, healthier lifestyle, and all that fun stuff. That can be tricky. Paula dealt with some issues around that when she lost quite a bit of weight. And if you've seen recent videos of Paula, she's a skinny mini. She's very petite now, and she's been able to keep the weight off through the diet that she follows. And she wouldn't call it a diet even. It's really just more of how she eats. It's a food lifestyle choice, for lack of a better description, and it's healthy foods. And Paula will be the first to say she eats a lot of food. She loves food, so she's very careful about how many calories she consumes, and so she knows which low-calorie foods she can feast on and which high-calorie foods she needs to be careful with. And so she keeps those low-calorie foods around for those times she knows she won't be able to exercise restraint. But in a lot of cases, when you've lost weight and you're getting some skin that is, like Anka said, lost the elasticity and looks somewhat old, honestly, the best approach is a surgical one, where there's different procedures they can do for arms, for the flanks, for your tummy, a tummy tuck, as it's commonly known. Without knowing the extent to what we're talking about, but having some idea of what I think you're describing, Anka, I think it's going to have to be the surgical route. You can't tighten up that skin to the degree that I think most of us would want to with just skincare alone. So if it were me, I would consider having a consultation with a cosmetic surgeon and present your areas of most concern and start there, talk about, have a frank discussion about what is and isn't possible. And also enjoy the fact that, you know, if you were at a point where you were overweight and you're now at a healthy weight, that chances are very good you've lowered your risk for a lot of different ailments, and even some diseases that could befall you later in life. There's a lot of research showing the importance of maintaining a healthy body weight. Does not mean everybody has to be rail thin. I'm not advocating for the other side of that, but just maintaining a healthy body weight. And maintaining a weight period as opposed to going up and down and up and down and up and down. That does a number on your metabolism. Togi says, hi, thank you for answering my question from last week. I have dry skin and I've been dealing with many little bumps that look similar to milia, no redness or sensitivity. I just can't seem to figure out if my skin is irritated or if it's congested. Either way, I'm using 2% BHA every night, hoping it'll help. To figure it out, any way to figure it out without seeing professionals. Dry skin, little bumps, looks similar to milia without redness, should you be using 2% BHA? So one thing that's worth mentioning, if the bumps are, if they're whitish, they're similar to your skin color and maybe a little lighter, chances are you're dealing with milia, and you may want to see. There's two options. The OTC option would be to try a higher strength salicylic acid product like our BHA9 as a spot treatment and see if that helps. And I would do that for a couple of weeks before you determine it's working or it's not. You may see some good results initially, and then they'll just get better the more you use it, to the point where the bumps go away, or you may find that you get a little improvement and then it kind of plateaus. That would be the time to consult a dermatologist, get that in-person medical diagnosis that yes, milia, closed comedones is what you're dealing with, and a doctor will be able to lance, take a sterilized surgical needle, poke a hole in the bump and drain the contents. That will resolve the bump. And then ongoing use of the BHA exfoliant will help keep those bumps from forming again. Because BHA just works wonderfully inside the pore lining to keep things moving, keep those clogs from forming and getting stuck deeper in the pore. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is that for some people, particularly if your bumps are around the outer pore, what's the word I'm looking for? The bony ridge, the orbital bone area, that's it, of your eye, you could have, I believe the medical term for them is a xanthoma. Could be off there, don't quote me. But anyway, those are flesh-colored to yellowish bumps that are actually, they're not milia, they're not clogged pores per se. They are deposits of cholesterol that can show up through the skin. Cholesterol is actually, the same kind you get a blood test for. Cholesterol is actually part of skin's intercellular matrix that helps reinforce a healthy skin barrier. It kind of partners with ceramides, although our skin's intercellular substances are about 50% ceramides, and I think roughly 25% cholesterol. But anyway, if you have high cholesterol, and if you don't know if you have high cholesterol or not, ask your primary care doctor for a blood test, a lipid panel it's called, to determine that. If your triglycerides are high or your cholesterol is high, what you're seeing could be a skin manifestation of that, and then that's a different course of treatment from a salicylic acid topical product. And you may need to discuss going on either a cholesterol-lowering diet or cholesterol-lowering medication, but that's something to discuss with your physician. GL Cork. Hi, Bryan. My mother and I love PC products. We both use the BHA, SPFs, serums, and 1% retinol treatment. What else would you suggest for brown spots? Thanks, from Greg in Ireland. Hello, Greg. By the way, I've been trying these different Irish butters that are supposedly from pasture-raised cows. So the milk they produce and that then we make the butter from, or the company makes the butter from, is supposed to have more omegas in it and the conjugated linoleic acid, the CLA, and it's delicious. Oh my gosh, that's good butter. I don't use butter a lot. My husband does. I try to get him to pull back, but he's the cook. Anyway, I think that they're great, and I love the Irish cheeses as well. So back to your question. Writing down the list of what you're using. You know, for brown spots, one of my favorite ingredients, and it's kind of an unsung hero, is azelaic acid. So our 10% azelaic acid booster is something that you and your mom could work into your routine. With the serums, with the 1% retinol treatment, you would want to apply the azelaic acid booster based on the texture of the other products you're using. So what I suspect, just knowing the textures of our products, I would put the azelaic acid booster on before the serum. I would do azelaic acid booster, 1% retinol, and then your serum, and then finish up with a regular moisturizer if you have dry skin. I think otherwise the layering of those three should provide enough hydration for you and your mom. And then if you're using the azelaic acid during the day, I would do cleanse tone, BHA exfoliant, azelaic acid booster, serum if you use your serum during the day, and then your sunscreen would be the order of application. Vitamin C and or niacinamide are other options to look at. We've got two different high-strength vitamin C boosters, the C15 and the C25. I like the C25 better as a spot treatment and the C15 to use all over. And then the niacinamide, that works on a different pathway of the melanin formation process, helps kind of regulate, so to speak, that excess or overproduction of melanin that drives the dark spots. There's definitely research, though, if your dark spots are stubborn, that shows that using more than one bioactive ingredient is the best approach. But having said all that, with what else you're using and whatnot, and because you'll get some benefit from the retinol as well in terms of the discolorations, kind of more of an indirect benefit. But I think adding the azelaic acid booster would be great. Okay, taking a breath. Andrea, Bryan, what are your thoughts on, Andrea Mocan, what are your thoughts on metformin as an anti-acne drug? There is some research that it might help with longevity. Perhaps it could delay wrinkles as well. Hashtag wishful thinking. I like how you think, Andrea. Metformin. Metformin, sorry, I said anti-acne and she wrote anti-aging. My apologies for that confusion there. I am not familiar with it. Let me see what I can find out from a quick search. Metformin. Like, is it a drug or is it an actual... Oh, it's an anti-diabetes medication. Prescription needed. No known risks if you're pregnant. Interactions can occur with alcohol. I'm going to look into that a little further, Andrea. I'm not equipped to answer that right now, but you have me intrigued. So let's regroup on that one. Rafa Fan says, Bryan, I'm sensitive to glycols and silicones. Any ideas for skincare products without these common ingredients? Wow. It's becoming easier to avoid silicones if you know that you're sensitive to them. I mean, most of our newer launches are silicone free. I'm not opposed to silicones. The research isn't there to support silicones being bad for skin, but I know more and more brands are getting away from them. As far as glycols, there are different glycols. I mean, you've got propylene glycol, butylene glycol, pentylene glycol, different variations of those. So if you know you're sensitive to all of those, and you've ruled out that you've tried products with no silicones, but one or more glycols, and you've tried silicone products that don't have any glycols, which those are few and far between, because if a silicone of some sort isn't paired with glycerin, it's almost always paired with the glycol because they have similar properties. And those two ingredients or types of ingredients form the backbone of countless moisturizers, eye creams, facial moisturizers with sunscreens. Again, you're seeing more and more brands getting away from silicones because a lot of people are worried about them. But in the case of actually having sensitivity, there are, I'm seeing more skincare products that are using decanes, like undecane, tridecane, dodecane, and those are considered hydrocarbon ingredients. So they're in the same chemical class as your mineral oil, your petrolatum, and some other more hydrocarbon ingredients where you've got a certain number of hydrogen and carbon atoms that make up that molecule. The interesting thing, though, about the decanes is that they were traditionally obtained from petroleum and refined and whatnot, so they weren't a problem as obtained from petroleum for use in cosmetics. But there are several companies that are manufacturing those ingredients from renewable plant sources, which I think is great. Petroleum is natural. It is not a renewable resource, though. We have a finite amount of it. There are lots of plants that are renewable. They're not in danger of, dying out. Of course, you have to keep planting them. There's also some companies, and this is really cool. They take a plant out of its natural habitat, and then they can regrow it in a lab setting, and then they can engineer the plant so that it produces, as the plant reproduces in a lab setting, it consistently produces the exact same characteristics and parameters. And I suppose you could say that there's a bit of genetic modification going on, but really, I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing, because in nature, when you're dealing with plants, you have all kinds of variables that are outside of our control that can impact how beneficial that plant is. Everything from the conditions of the soil, the use of pesticides, and even if the plant is organic, if the farm, a couple acres down the road is not using organic farming or is using a problematic pesticide, that stuff gets in the air. It can blow over to the organic farm, and some of it can get on those plants. So, and then there's weather issues and climate, and when we have droughts and or floods and all of that can impact how a plant grows from year to year, and then how nutritional it is. Interestingly, plants that are grown in more hostile conditions or in more severe climate conditions actually tend to have a higher antioxidant content than when the plant is grown in what would be considered like optimum soil, optimum temperature, optimum mix of sun and rain. Isn't that interesting? It's like it's a self-preservation mechanism that the plant literally starts making, it senses that the environment it's growing in isn't the most hospitable, and it produces more antioxidants in response to that. Kind of cool, huh? So I think that if you can start finding more products with those plant-based decaying ingredients, there are also plant-based glycols. Paula's Choice has started using a plant source for our butylene glycol, whereas previously we were using a synthetic form. And it's not that the synthetic form was a problem, but it's potentially possible that there's something about the synthetic glycol that was bothering your skin, but your skin can handle the plant-derived glycol. So all of this boils down to the need to experiment, check ingredient lists, which I'll bet you're already doing. With those two groups of ingredients still being so prevalent, I think your choices are going to be limited, and you may hit a bit of a wall in terms of companies being transparent to say, yes, the glycol we use is synthetic, or yes, it's plant-based. They may not tell you. They may say it's proprietary. That's their prerogative. And with what you're dealing with, I would say if that's the wall you hit with a certain brand, move on. Okay. Oh my, questions. And we are about almost to the halfway point. I need to just do shorter answers. I love sharing this stuff with you guys. Did I miss? Somehow I missed Tiffany's question from the top. Tiffany Dones. I read an article about not starting retinol too young due to the Hayflick limit. According to Dr. Patterson, is there evidence for this and should it be a concern? I hope not. It is not a concern. The Hayflick limit is about how often cells in our body divide and then go through their maturation process. And the cells in our body, you know, we eventually die. We're not immortal, and part of how we die is if we're dying of natural causes or some, you know, issue like cancer. You know, the older you get, the more likely you are to get one or more types of cancers, simply because of what's called cell senescence and cell malfunction or mutations, where the normal pattern of cell division is either isn't working or it just stops. You know, there's a time limit, and it's frustrating. It's a fascinating area of research because that time limit isn't the same for everyone. It's not like, you know, by the time, if we're lucky enough to make it to age 80, you know, in terms of cell senescence, we're all in the same boat. It's different, and there's factors that are within your control that influence that. There's genetic factors which are out of your control, lifestyle factors that are in your control, like diet, exercise, not smoking, things like that. But in terms of retinol, the Hayflick limit is about living cells. The cells that retinol addresses in the uppermost layers of skin, and then the influence it has on the lower layers, that is far removed from where cells are born and how they and then how often they go through the same pattern of birth to death. By the time those cells get to the surface, or if we're talking about skin cells, they're dead. Retinol is an interesting ingredient, though, because it can positively influence both dead cells, and it can change how damaged cells are formed and how they move through the layers of skin. Because, for example, as a result of sun damage over time, that process can become faulty. So retinol is one of those cool ingredients as a cell communicator that can go in and say, hey, skin cell, the process that you're following isn't right. I can't correct it 100%, but I can start getting you on the right path and start giving you this message to do things the way you used to do and get back to some level of normalcy. That's where retinol really excels. But retinol doesn't influence the brand new, I think what the term in the literature is nascent cell. It's just beyond its reach. So there's no cause for concern that using retinol too soon is going to impact the Hayflick limit. I often liken this to diet in the sense that using or eating blueberries, you know, as a baby, you know, when you can start chewing food, they're just as good for you then as they will be later in life. It's not as though if you start eating blueberries at too young of an age, then when you're in your 50s and you want to eat blueberries again, your body's going to be like, sorry, I got nothing. I can't work with this anymore. You started eating them too soon. It just doesn't work that way, and it's the same for ingredients like retinol. I wish I had started using retinol a little earlier than I did, because it's one of my favorite skincare ingredients. Okay, popping back down the list. Aphrodite says, hello, I have rosacea, but I love PC vitamin C. How often could I use it? Also, last time you were wondering about my name. Well, I am a woman and my name means Venus in Greek. Got it. Okay. Okay, rosacea and vitamin C, that can be a little tricky. It's always tricky with any of the bioactive ingredients with rosacea, because even in the absence of any research showing that there's potential for irritation, people with rosacea simply have more delicate, sensitive, reactive skin, which makes it a struggle. And I would suggest, rather than jumping into one of our higher strength vitamin C products, I would suggest starting with one of our products that has a lower amount of vitamin C, such as our Resist Super Antioxidant Concentrate Serum or the Resist Pure Radiant Skin Brightening Treatment. You could also look at the Resist Bright. Is it still in Resist? It may have come out of that branding. The brightening essence that we have, I would start with one of those and then see how your skin responds before jumping into a higher strength. If you do decide, I'm going to take a chance and go for the higher strength product, I would test it on a small area, maybe the cheek. I would, a lot of times you'll read, test it on the inner crook of your arm, and if no reaction is experienced, proceed. In the case of rosacea, though, people don't get rosacea on their arms. and so you want to put the product where you're actually intending to use it, but rather than spread it all over, just apply it to a small area. Don't put anything over it. Wash your face first and then leave the area undisturbed and see how your skin does. If you do experience any initial signs of irritation or stinging or redness, I would very carefully wash the area where you put it, maybe dab on some hydrocortisone cream and say, nope, not right now. It's just not going to work. Nikolai says, hi, Bryan. I look forward to these chats every week. Turning 30 later this year and thinking of getting all therapy or thermage. Is it too soon? I follow an advanced PC routine, SPF every day. Thanks. So you're 29. All therapy and thermage are both non-invasive treatments that use, all therapy uses heat, thermage uses radio frequency that is designed to tighten substances like collagen deeper in skin, past where skincare products can work. So those are great examples of non-invasive cosmetic corrective procedures that can work hand in hand with your topical products, meaning they pick up where your topicals leave off. So it's not use skincare or have these procedures. It's consider both, depending on what your concerns are. In your case, though, unless you have noticeable first signs of sagging, maybe around your eyes, maybe under here, the jowl area, but it's not too common in people who are your age unless you've had a lot of sun damage and maybe years and years of tanning. So not unheard of, but I would think, and I think most cosmetic dermatologists would agree, that you're on the younger side to get those procedures, and they're expensive. So it's not like having them done like what I was just saying a moment ago about starting retinol too soon. It's not as if you have all therapy or thermage before you need it, that it isn't going to work when you need it. In this particular situation, it's a question of whether or not you should spend the money. So what I would do is go to make an appointment with a cosmetic dermatologist who offers one or both of those procedures, as well as other types of in-office treatments, and say, doctor, here's my concern, here's what I'm worried about, what would you recommend? It might be as simple as trying some Botox or maybe even a little bit of filler, and either one of those options would be less painful than all therapy or thermage. They both can hurt. All therapy in particular, it can be, you don't want to have all therapy done without having some numbing done beforehand. So that would be my advice. And happy almost birthday. SN12, hi Bryan, I brought Blackberry Bubbly because of you and am now addicted, huh? It is so good. I gave some to my mother the other night and she's like, where have you been all my life? And she wasn't even drinking Chardonnay. AJ, finally caught you live. Which cream treatment is best to counteract retinol peeling? Thanks a mil. There isn't like a single one, AJ, where it's like, oh, you have to try this. So I would look for a product like, for example, our Omega Moisturizer or Omega Serum, just because those are so calming and so anti-inflammatory because of their omega fatty acid loads. I think that either one of those would be great. You could also try an over-the-counter hydrocortisone cream, about a 1% concentration, and then layer that under a product like our Omega Serum or Moisturizer. If you don't want either, the Omega Serum is more of a lotiony texture that has a bit of an oily feel to it, but not greasy. And then the cream is like a cloud-like fluffy cream texture. It's actually kind of cool. But some people, if you have oily skin, might find that too heavy. In that case, I would say try a product like our Calm Redness Relief Serum, which has a high amount of anti-inflammatory ingredients, but in a really thin, silky gel type base. So those would be my top picks from our line for that concern. Esther, when will the FDA mandate sunscreen makers to share the degree of UVA protection? I don't know. I wish they would get their act together around that. Right now, they're fast and furiously looking at additional studies and research on the other approved actives in the United States, not outside of the United States, that and how they interact with skin and what happens when they get into the body. So I think that line of testing has taken precedence over any sort of agreement on listing UVA protection. On that note, specific to our sunscreens, all of our sunscreens have passed what's called the critical wavelength test. We are allowed to make UVA protecting claims for our sunscreens, the broad spectrum claim. So that's great. We're very happy about that. Massimo, can using retinol too early on cause your skin to be dependent on it and start having difficulty functioning without it? Basically, can using retinol too early do more bad damage than good? No. No truth to that at all. And again, going back to the food analogy, although a little bit different because our bodies can't function without food or some sort of caloric nutrient intake. But yeah, it's there. You don't need to worry about using retinol too soon. Your skin doesn't really become dependent on anything. As far as like addicted or getting used to it, so then it stops working. What can happen though, with ingredients like retinol, with ingredients like alpha and beta hydroxy acids, is that if your skin wasn't so great to start with, and then you begin using those ingredients and you begin protecting your skin from more environmental damage, particularly the sun, you're going to reach a point with those other ingredients where the results plateau. So on the upside, your skin isn't going to get any worse. Hopefully it's improved quite a bit, but you have the knowledge that it's not like dramatically improving the way it did the first couple of months that you were using those ingredients and seeing these really cool transformative changes. But then you have the knowledge of knowing that you are doing healthy, good things for your skin, so you are preventing signs of aging and other issues that would have happened had you not taken steps to intervene, particularly around sun protection. No worries there. Rebecca says, will there be a product coming out to replace the refreshing moisture mist? I love that stuff, and I was so bummed when I realized it was gone. At this point, no. There is not a product that is set to replace that. However, there is a new product from, it's a little on the pricey side, it's from the brand Youth to the People. That is a spray-on mist type product. It's actually a spray-on lotion that kind of, but it goes on like a fine mist. Youth to the People, Adaptogen, something. I'm spacing on the name, but go to their website. I'm sure you can find it, and that would be worth checking out. I would, based on the ingredients and the method of dispersion, I would recommend it. Adri says, oh my god, yay! Home with a back injury. That's nothing to yay about. Thinking about PC products trying to use. Okay, so you're happy to see me. Okay, well, I am not happy that you're home with a back injury. I have dealt with those myself, and one of them was a few years ago, and I used to think, is this what it's going to be like when, if I'm lucky enough to get to be really, really old and my bones and joints start deteriorating? And I felt like an old man, like a really old man, when I had a back injury. I mean, I just remember like getting into and out of a car was an ordeal. It's just amazing how much that can sidetrack you. Okay. I think Adri has a question. I think I'm only seeing part of the question though. Something about each one. Treat the scabs gently and they heal in under 2 weeks with no scar. Yay, they will return, but this treatment gives a huge aesthetic improvement. I may have missed something that you posted earlier. Nope, not seeing it. But it sounds like it was good news. So try, if you want to fill in the blanks, I might catch it later on down the feed here. Fake Algorithm says, hey, Bryan, I love listening to this informative chat. I wanted to know your thoughts on adaptogens in skincare. Is it true that they are able to reduce inflammation in skin? It depends on the adaptogen, and what's meant by adaptogen are there are certain plants. Is it ginkgo biloba, I believe, is one of them, and there's an Ayurvedic plant, ashwagandha. I'm probably butchering that name. It's a very long name. Holy basil is an adaptogen. Essentially, what that means is a plant that can survive, if not, and actually thrive in very harsh climatic conditions. Remember what I was saying earlier about plants that grow in such conditions actually being a richer source of antioxidants than even the same type of plant that would grow, in a well manicured yard where you get a nice mix of sun and water and all that. And the worse the environment, the better the antioxidants are, oddly enough. So the theory around adaptogens in plants is that the plant, what's often claimed, is that the way that the plant survives in these harsh conditions, extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme drought, can somehow transfer that adaptogenic ability to your skin. That's the part that's misleading. It just doesn't work that way any more than I could rub a blueberry on my skin and expect to start getting blueberry cells popping out. Like when you use plant stem cells, the plant stem cell only knows how to tell similar cells what to do. A plant stem cell from apple can't tell a human skin stem cell to make the right kind of cells that a human being. However, those ingredients, including the adaptogens, are absolutely antioxidants, and the majority of antioxidants from plants. Had a bit of a technical difficulty there. I think we're recovering. Okay, I'm going to keep talking. The majority of antioxidants from plants are also anti-inflammatory, so I think that they're great. I just think you need to be careful about believing the claims if the brand is going down that path of saying, what helps the plant survive in nature is exactly what's going to help your plant withstand extreme cold too. Or especially if they make any claims around withstanding sun protection in the absence of sunscreen. Because there are plants, and vitamins for that matter, that research has shown, and algae, for example, certain types of algae can protect skin from the deleterious effects, there's a 50-cent word, of UVB radiation. However, although that's interesting and impressive, it does not replace the need for sun protection. If anything, like going back to algae, there's research showing that sunscreens that contain different types of algae, there isn't one per se that's considered the best, but there's some interesting studies showing that sunscreens with algae ingredients actually perform better than those that do not contain them. I think that's really more about the whole the whole line of thinking that because algae are antioxidants too, anytime you mix antioxidants into a sunscreen, you're going to get a better performing product in terms of environmental protection. Okay. Oh, Kerrygold Irish butter. Thank you, Airy Fairy. That's what it was. That's the one I have. And then they our grocery store has Kerrygold cheese, and I tried the grass-fed dairy cheese. I hope we're gonna have some grass left after all this grass feeding. I'm assuming we will. But the grass-fed Kerrygold cheese was delicious. The white cheddar. Joan says, my PC routine causes me a lot of sensitivity. Well, that's not good. 2% BHA liquid, 10% niacinamide, and C15 as actives. Any recommendations? So you're using those three right there are definitely more active products. My first recommendation would be to separate usage of them. Don't apply them all at once. Experiment. Start this way. Start just using the BHA liquid and not the other two products, and then see how your skin does. And do that for several days. applying the BHA liquid once per day, morning or evening, your choice. And if you see that your skin is normalizing and things are looking good and you're like, wow, I really like this BHA exfoliant, introduce the 10% niacinamide once per day. I would suggest applying it at a different time of day than the 2% BHA liquid, so you get a better sense of how your skin is responding to the niacinamide on its own versus the niacinamide layered over or under the 2% BHA liquid. General order of application that would be exfoliant and then your treatment. And then if that seems to be working well, consider adding the C15 booster, same pattern. Apply it on its own, apply the BHA and the niacinamide. If you've determined you can use those at the same time, say put those on in the morning and then you use the C15 at night. It could also be that you just need to alternate days. I mean, that's what I do. For example, I use the C15. I use our 1% retinol booster. I don't use the niacinamide booster. I kind of go back and forth on that one. I think what I get from the C15 and the azelaic acid booster and the retinol booster, those are and then the peptide booster. I rotate between all four of those, usually applying one and often two at night, and then if my skin is drier, I might work in the hyaluronic acid booster and then top it off with a lightweight moisturizer, but that's separate. Oftentimes, just applying them less frequently will work beautifully. It's about finding that balance and not being worried that you have to put everything on your skin all at once all the time, or it's kind of that all or nothing thinking. And sometimes it's more of a slow and steady wins the race depending on how your skin responds. Tiffany, I think we're on a theme here, aren't we? I overdid it with the 1% retinol. My face is on fire. How do I fix it? One of the things to keep in mind about retinol is that it can have, especially at 1%, it has a longer half-life in skin. That's why, for some people who are sensitive to it, day 1, no issues. Day 2, no issues. Day 3, little sensitivity. Day 4, whoa. And you're just like, what happened? We started out so well. It's like going on a few dates and then like he really messes up on the 3rd or 4th date and you're like, what did I ever see in this guy? So does not mean though that you can't use retinol. It does mean that you need to step back with your frequency of application. It could also mean that you need to use a lower strength of retinol. 1% is a lot. It's a potent ingredient. You could also try, if you're using the 1%, well, either the booster or the clinical 1% retinol treatment, try mixing it with a moisturizer or serum and then applying, like you'd dispense the retinol, your moisturizer, mix it up in your hand, and then apply that combination. That could be helpful. For right now, though, I would stop using the retinol until till the fire is out. And I would consider hydrocortisone. It's just my go-to for short-term use to relieve irritation and discomfort. And then I would follow with a bland, I shouldn't say bland. Really what I mean is a gentle, fragrance-free moisturizer, which any of the non-retinol containing ones, because again, when you're dealing with a reaction to retinol, with like what you've described, I would say cut out retinol entirely until your face is back to normal, and then ease back into it. And see, you may be a better candidate within our line for the Resist Intensive Wrinkle Repair Retinol Serum. That has 0.1% retinol in it, and then you can ease back up to the 1% strength. Like in my situation, I can use that Intensive Wrinkle Repair Retinol Serum every night if I wanted to without any issue whatsoever. With the 1% formula, and I use our booster, I can use that about 3 times a week, and I'm golden. If I try to push it past that, especially with everything else I use, it's too much. Tipping that scale, you want to keep it balanced so that you're just getting the benefits and no signs of irritation. All right, 9 more minutes or so. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. Elkos, I use AHA and BHA about twice a week. I wear sunscreen every day, but still feel like I'm exposing my skin to the sun. I have a toddler and spend many hours outside. Should I stop using exfoliants? Retinol. If you wear sunscreen every day, I mean, no sunscreen is 100% block. That's why the term sunblock was disallowed by the US FDA and as far as I've seen in most other parts of the world. What I would suggest is taking other sun protection measures. Get a pair of broad wraparound type sunglasses, which can be brilliant for protecting the skin, the temple area and the skin around the eyes. Most styles of sunglasses let UV light in from above and below, so you want kind of those close-fitting wraparound style. It doesn't have to look like, you know, a Vanilla Ice from the early 90s. You can definitely, I mean, I have a stylish, I think they're stylish, pair of Ray-Bans that meet those requirements that I got from Sunglass Hut a few years ago. There's a few different sunglass chains around there. Get a pair of high quality sunglasses, though I think it's a very good investment. And preferably polarized because it makes a huge difference when you're out in the sun, especially when you're driving. Hats, sun protective clothing. The other thing you could try doing is layering multiple products that have sunscreen. So, for example, if we're talking about the Paula's Choice line, you could use our smoothing primer serum with SPF 30. And then you could put that over your daytime moisturizer with sunscreen. It's fine to apply another SPF rated product on top of an existing sunscreen. What you don't want to do is put a non-SPF rated product over your sunscreen because that is going to impact the SPF's effectiveness, and how much we just don't know, but we know that you're disrupting it to some degree. It's kind of just like when you put sunscreen on your arm, if you rub your arm, you're taking some of that sun protection away. That's why reapplication is important for long days outdoors, one of the reasons. But layering sunscreens can give you even better and longer lasting protection. You could finish with a tinted moisturizer with sunscreen, or a foundation with sunscreen, or even dust on some powder with sunscreen. We just launched, well, maybe 2 months ago, launched our on-the-go shielding powder, which is a mineral-based SPF 30, super portable. You can just brush it on to touch up your sun protection without a heavy feel and without having to wash everything off and start all over again. So I love it for that. That would be my advice. And then, if possible, if your toddler lets you, try to avoid the sun when it's at its most intense, which is generally in most parts of the United States, if that's where you're living, is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you can follow those guidelines, I don't necessarily think you need to step back your exfoliants or your retinols because you're already being sun smart. You just could be sun smarter, and hopefully I've given you some great options to do that. Oh, Mariah Carey. Maybe the singer? Bryan, darling, this is Mariah. When do I put on my dark spot treatment with hydroquinone? After or before Moisturizer Serum exfoliant? Keep looking festive, darling. Okay, so I've been using hydroquinone on a dark spot I have over here. There's concealer on it now. But honestly, I've been using our hydroquinone lotion and I've really noticed a nice difference. It's just, no wonder hydroquinone remains the gold standard. I wish it didn't have the bad rap it does, but it is safe when used as directed. So what I do, I put it on in the morning and at night. And in the morning, I kind of, just because I'm applying it to that one spot, I let it sit for a few minutes. So I'll just I'll blow dry my hair, take care of some other things around the house. I let it absorb for a few minutes, and then I put my sunscreen on. And then at night, I put it on over my moisturizer, so it's the last thing I apply. And it'll get through to where it needs to get through. I'm not putting on like a thick balm-like salve over my face. If that describes you because you have super dry skin, then I would say put your hydroquinone product on before and then follow with that heavy-duty moisturizer, being careful that applying it around where the hydroquinone was, that you're not rubbing it off where it needs to be. It isn't harmful to take it to another area of your skin, but you want to keep it where it's going to do the most good, right? Right. Okay. That would be my advice. A couple more minutes here. We'll go through some questions as quickly as possible. Ina says, hi, Bryan. Quick question on tranexamic acid. To what extent is it helpful to combat post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation and dark spots? Any plans for formulating a PC product with it? Thank you. Tranexamic acid, kind of a newer ingredient. I've seen some interesting studies on it being compared with hydroquinone and having roughly the same amount of effectiveness. This was looking at melasma, which is a more diffuse. Melasma can absolutely be darker, but unlike like a concentrated dark sunspot, melasma is more diffuse, usually affecting the perimeter of the face, but it can happen elsewhere. It can be driven by sun damage. It can be driven by hormones. It can be driven by a combination of both. At this point, tranexamic acid is something that I'm like, kind of keeping an eye on what the research says, and we'll go from there. So I do think it shows promise, but I don't know for sure at this point that I would say, oh, it's a slam dunk and everyone should be using it. I'm seeing it in some leave-on exfoliant type products. There's a peel from your ad that contains it along with some AHAs and BHAs, and I think they're making claims around skin tone improvement, and I could see it being helpful, especially along with those acid ingredients for that concern. So not writing it off, but not going on record saying I'm in love with it at this point. All right, Irinini. Hello from Greece. Thank you for so good formulas, but the delivery price in Europe is a little high. Please give a big hug from me to Paula. I learned so much from her. When I see her next time, I will. I always try to get together with Paula when I am in Seattle, and her schedule has her there too. But thank you for the compliments. I know the cost of shipping in Europe can be a little outrageous. Sorry about that. Terrence asks, AHA for skin tags. No, skin tags, you might be able to improve their texture with a leave-on exfoliant. You might see a little bit of a size reduction in them. But really skin tags, which are just benign growths of excess skin. Some people have a genetic predisposition to them. For some of us, they just happen as we get older. They tend to occur on areas where we have friction with clothing. So for example, I've had a couple and I've had them removed that are like right here along my t-shirt line, and it's exactly from that friction of the clothing rubbing against the skin. Some people get them in their bikini line, underarm area. It just depends. But bottom line is you need to go see a doctor and have them removed. There really isn't a great topical option. You'll see products advertised as saying that they get rid of skin tags, and I would be very nervous personally about using them on any skin tag I had. And it's such a simple procedure. I don't even know that you need to go see a dermatologist per se, unless you just have a lot of them or they're really large. The tinier ones could just be snipped off in office. But again, and I do stress, it can be as simple as snipping them off, but it's not something I would advocate doing yourself at home for obvious reasons, especially if it's in a hard to reach or hard to see area. You could hurt yourself, and we don't want that. Okay. Oh, Liz is asking about sebaceous filaments. That can be a bit of a longer discussion. In terms of treating them, though, sebaceous filaments are basically part of the pore structure, and for some people, so you can't get rid of them. They are a natural physiologic part of our skin. For some people, though, they're more apparent, and really the best thing to do to stay on top of them is ongoing use of BHA exfoliants. You could also look at seeing an esthetician or even a dermatologist who will probably have an esthetician do it for a series of BHA or even AHA peels. So that's my 30-second advice for sebaceous filaments. And then from a, let's feel better about ourselves, self-esteem perspective, no one's looking at your sebaceous filaments as closely as you are. I promise you. I have to tell myself that when I bemoan the size of some of my pores. But I get that it can be distressing, especially with, selfies and no filters and magnifying mirrors. So talk to your doctor about it, though, your dermatologist or an esthetician, and keep using those BHAs. All right, let's do one more question. Let's see. Jacopo says, what's the best product from Paula's to help redness and flaking from tretinoin? There are a few. I would say my favorite combination, though, would be the Resist Advanced Replenishing Toner, which is super hydrating, milky, and just loaded with anti-inflammatory calming ingredients. And then I would follow with the Resist Omega Plus Complex Serum. If you have other concerns that you're using tretinoin for example, around breakouts or discolorations, I think adding the 10% azelaic acid booster, can you tell I love that product? It's just such a cool ingredient. I think adding that to your routine could also help because it is so anti-inflammatory and can also target in a unique way some of the sources of discoloration, redness, and breakouts. So that is it for this week. Thank you for spending this hour with me. I will be back in full voice next week. And we will see what is on your mind then, what we have to share about Paula's Choice. I know some of you are asking about some sneak peeks on new products. I'm not sharing specifics, but I will tell you that we have no fewer than 3 new products launching this month. So look out for those. They will be hitting the website fairly soon, or your inbox if you subscribe to our emails. Come back and see us at paulaschoice.com, and I'll talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.